Zax, and here's a little preview of every boss in the new raid, Liberation of Undermine. Brought to you by Wowhead, the best place to find all the info you need to be ready for the raid. Quick reminder before I get into it, our Patreon is going to have a bunch of exclusive content this tier, like extended heroic guides, mythic walkthrough guides, and a new weekly podcast. For anybody that
I do like these guys. They're very good. So what this is our this is get to look at the first raid. All right. The
first boss of the raid is Vexy and the Gear Grinders. This fight has two alternating phases. In phase 1, you fight this big tank, the Gear Grinder, and some biker ads that spawn every once in a while. And the goal of the phase is to prevent the boss from getting to full energy and doing crazy raid dam. To do this, you have to kill each wave of biker.
Now I'm really liking the way that they have the circles, so no longer do you have to guess about the circles. This is very FF14-esque of how to be able to dodge
ads so that they leave their bikes behind and then have players jump into the bikes and launch them into the boss.
Oh my goodness. So people have to jump into the bikes. You have to coordinate this. This is going to be a pug killer.
In order to break all the boss's plating stacks and end phase 1. The only thing the bikers do is charge toward random players, so you can kind of bait them where you want them to go, which makes them super easy to
Okay, so you basically bait them into the wall.
AoE down. There's also some fire circles on the ground to dodge, especially the ones that follow a couple random players for a few seconds. And on heroic, these pools of oil spawn on the ground under the boss and marked players. The pools actually stun any bikers that go through them, and they can also be burned away by getting one of
the
little fire circles to hit them.
I don't like that already.
The boss kind of goes AFK and takes
I'm a masturbator. Whatever I am not, you see it.
Double damage for 45 seconds, but these little mechanic ads also spawn that try to cast on the boss and shorten the phase. So everyone has to help interrupt those guys and cleave them down. Then it's back to phase 1, rinse and repeat. And that's pretty much it. After the first boss, you can go to any of the next 4 bosses in any order, but we'll start with the second boss in the journal, Cauldron of Carnage. This is a 2-boss fight where you have to—
This is everything that's been on the on all of the promo material as these two. This is what they're selling you. The King Kong versus Godzilla deal.
To evenly split your raid and fight the bosses on opposite sides of the room because they can't be within 40 yards of each other or else they go immune. You also have to fully swap sides every once in a while because both bosses
is there a mount for this one
on anyone in range, and you need that to reset at some point. Luckily, there's a really clear time to do this because at full energy, the bosses clash in the middle of the room for a little bit and do a bunch of raid-wide damage and spawn a bunch of stuff to dodge. So everyone just moves to the opposite side during all this. As for the regular—
Look how much shit is going on. So I feel sorry for someone that is a hard caster because the mobility that you need in this dungeon to do any damage, I mean, Neo, how is that going to be for you? I mean, quite honestly, any casters out there?
Mechanics. On the left side, you've got Florendo, the big T-Rex. He spawns a big bomb that everyone on that side has to soak to reduce the raid-wide damage it does.
Yeah, don't bring a Warlock.
He shoots a fire beam at a marked player, which everyone has to dodge. And on heroic, he sometimes puts fire circles around everyone that you want to spread out for. On the right side, you've got Torque, the big gorilla. He gives everyone on his side this resource bar that goes up when you move and goes down when you stay still. And if you move—
Oh, that's kind of like that boss that was in the very first boss that was on Mythic for Nyalotha. So in Nyalotha, you couldn't take too many stacks, and the only way to drop it if you were like a demon hunter or a hunter was to disengage or vengeful retreat so that you can get the mobility back and not freeze yourself, something like that.
Move too much at once and it fills all the way up, you get stunned for a few seconds. So you just can't move too much at once. He also spawns circles under everyone's feet for a few seconds that you have to dodge, which forces you to fill up your movement bar a little bit. And on heroic—
Exactly, and that's what they did in the other one.
He spawns these images that fixate random players and move toward them, exploding and leaving lightning on the ground if they touch anyone before they expire. Other than all that, you just have to try to kill the bosses around the same time because when one dies, the other one starts to enrage.
Why have they gone with this tactic? Why do you think they're going with this tactic to start killing everything at the same time? They've done it, of course, in Stone Vault. They're doing it in the raid. They also have it going for another, what? Oh, God dang it. They're doing it in another dungeon. Anybody want to help me out with the name? I won't peek. Can't remember.
And that's pretty much it. On to the third boss, Rick Reverb. This boss has 2 alternating phases. Phase 1 mainly revolves around these amplifiers that get dropped on the ground throughout the phase. They slowly gain energy over time, and if they ever hit full energy, they start doing massive raid damage. So to prevent that, every once in a while you have to have players run over to them and right click on them to drain their energy, taking some damage in the process.
Okay, so that right there is junkyard.
Not too bad, but on Heroic, draining an amplifier leaves a debuff on you that makes you take extra damage from draining for a while. So you kind of have to rotate who's draining each time, which can get a little messy. Other than the amplifiers, the boss also has a bunch of regular abilities. He has a cast that makes a bunch of these circles shoot out from the amplifiers for everyone to dodge, which on Heroic, if you get hit by 2 of these in a row, you get mind controlled and walk toward the boss, and your team has to break you out with damage. He has a beam that he shoots at a marked target, which everyone else has to dodge. He puts these blue circles on a bunch of random players, which is a pulsing AoE dot that everyone has to spread out for. His melee swings are little frontals, so everyone has to stay out of the front. He gives extra energy to amplifiers that are too close to him, so you have to keep him away from them. And on Heroic, he spawns these bomb ads on the ground that everyone has to help kill before they explode on the raid after a few seconds.
That shouldn't be too easy. I mean, too hard. That shouldn't be too hard. I'm going to have some more questions about these draining things. Why aren't they drained empty?
And as a little bonus, you even get a haste buff for doing damage to them. At full energy, the boss starts phase 2, where he goes immune and starts spawning these expanding rings under himself that basically one-shot anyone they touch.
You guys are fucking toxic. Really?
And the only way to survive these rings is by finding the random amplifier that gets
dirty.
overloaded and has this circle around it, and running over to be in the circle by the time the ring comes through, because this...
Oh my god, this is going to be another one of Queen Anseric, so we jump... Oh my goodness.
Launches everyone in the circle over the...
This is a raid, right? This is going to be, what, 4th boss in?
Ring, avoiding it entirely. You have to do this a few times in a row, and then it's back to phase 1. But there will be 1 amplifier left over from the previous phase 1, so the fight gets harder over time. And the third phase 2 is a hard enrage, so you're on a pretty strict timer. And that's pretty much it. On to the 4th boss, Styx.
Shit, that was the 3rd boss? Oh my god, you guys are all fucking... You're not going anywhere with your raids. I'm telling you right now. I mean, I'm a fantastic player, but I feel for all of you guys. I really do. You know, you better learn this shit on LFR, for sure. And story mode. Take advantage of story mode.
This boss only has 1 phase, but it's super unique. The main thing that happens is at full energy, the boss does this big lightning channel that spawns a bunch of these green garbage piles, as well as this big bomb randomly around the room. It also picks a few random players to automatically get put on these garbage balls that roll forward, and those players have to steer the balls through garbage piles to soak them up and grow the ball, eventually getting the ball big enough to be able to run into the bomb and destroy it before it explodes and wipes the raid.
Cheeky can do that. Cheeky likes going through trash with his wheels.
Only need 1 of the ball players to do this, so the rest of the balls can actually be ran into the boss to do a ton of boss damage depending on how big your ball is. The balls can also be used to soak up any of the little ads that spawn throughout the fight, which is nice because the ads take double damage once they're released from the ball. Speaking of the ads, they don't really do anything too crazy. There's scrap masters that jump around and have to be interrupted, and there's hyenas that have to be tanked.
Is this the same fantastic player who shot the orb into the wall last night? I was having lag like everyone else. Everyone knows that when there's lag, you can't control your player. You can't see where things are going. Yeah, it happens. It happens. But is this the same guy who was well below everybody else and was still leading damage meters? I mean, let's be serious about who we're talking about here. And I'm on a class that's supposed to be like F tier. I'm supposed to be like shit, and I'm leading meters. And not only that, but I'm not going to say my age here, but you guys lost to an old fuck.
Other than that, the boss also puts these little fire circles around a bunch of players, which you need to spread out for, but you also...
Yeah, who's going to catch the balls? Who's the biggest ball catcher here?
Also need to keep them away from those green garbage piles, because if you touch them with the fire, they ignite and do pulsing damage to the raid for a long time.
And that's what I'm saying. Healers are going to be really tested through... There's going to be damage checks or healing checks. I do apologize. Healing checks for a lot of these, so be ready.
Non-heroic, these bomb ads spawn that are attached to a few...
I didn't beat you because I was lagging in that key. I was lagging in that key. Sorry.
the garbage piles, and everyone has to help kill them before they explode on the raid. They detach from their pile at 75% health and can be moved after that with knocks or grips, but the rolling ball players also have to be careful not to run into them or else it triggers their explosion and wastes the ball. At a certain point, the boss goes on a short, almost intermission, where he flies up in the air and goes immune for a few seconds, and then crashes back down and gains a buff for the rest of the fight that makes him spawn an additional big bomb at full energy. This means you need 2 of the ball players to get their ball to full size and run them into the 2.
Dude, this is supposed to be Pug enabled? This is supposed to be Pug enabled? On Heroic, I bet you, I shit you not. I don't remember because you guys were all trolling. I bet you not. That one person cannot do it twice. I bet you, because even like say I give 5 assignments. I bet you two people cannot do it because of a debuff that's going to be on them.
2 bombs around the room to prevent a wipe, and that's pretty much it. On to the 5th boss, Sprocketmonger.
I just looked at that picture. That picture has a lot of shit going on. But, I mean, let's go.
Lock and Stock. This boss has 2 alternating phases. In phase 1, you have to deal with a bunch of simpler mechanics that don't really have much to do with
What
each
was
other,
his
but
name?
they get a little crazy. Pretty much it. On to the 5th boss,
His name is
Sprocketmonger Lock and Stock. This boss has 2 alternating phases. In phase 1, you have to deal with a bunch of simpler mechanics that don't really have much to do with each other, but they get a little crazy later in the fight. You have to stay out of the sections of the room that the boss electrifies, which actually doesn't cover the conveyor belts around the room, so you can use those to move around. And he changes the sections throughout the fight, so you do have to relocate around the room sometimes, but the pattern is the same every pull. The boss makes these drills spawn under marked players' feet for a couple seconds, which everyone has to avoid. And the boss has 3 different inventions he can activate, which come cruising down the conveyor belts beforehand. On the left side, you've got the fire beams, which everyone has to avoid. On the right side, you've got the rockets that shoot across the room, which everyone has to dodge. And in the middle, you've got the magnets that pull everyone toward them for a couple seconds and stun you if you touch them. Only one of these inventions can get activated at a time in the beginning, so things start off pretty chill. On Heroic, the boss also spawns these mines on the ground in set locations, which explode on the raid if you step on them. And the raid has to stagger setting them off one by one, because when one goes off...
Oh, they're talking about these bombs here? Are they talking about all the bombs that are coming? Okay. So you can only step on one at a time?
It puts a 2-second debuff.
This is going to be a fucking shit show. I shit you not. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it.
Buff on the raid that makes them take way more mine damage.
This is creative. Creative, yes. But there's a lot going on. Would you agree or disagree? Is there not a lot going on so far that you've seen in this raid? More than you've seen in a lot of other? Like right now, I've not seen a Stitch Flesh. You know, that had a minor type of stuff. And I'm talking about Necrotic Wake. No spanking tank at all. Everything's had movement.
And they all go off on their own if left alone for too long. The player that steps on the mine also gets a personal debuff for a while that makes them take way more damage from stepping on another mine, so you have to rotate mine steppers as well. At full energy, the boss starts phase 2, where he yeets everybody to the entrance of the room and jumps away to the opposite side of the room, and everybody has to survive about 20 seconds of the whole room being electrified, all these circles spawning on the ground, and all the conveyor belts moving, with the middle one having traps on it. Then it's back to phase 1, but now one of his inventions is upgraded. The first upgrade is to the fire beams, which are now huge void beams that take up way more space. And now multiple inventions can activate at a time, so you'll have to dodge rockets while avoiding the big void beams at the same time, or resist the magnets while avoiding the beams, etc. After another phase 2, the rockets get upgraded and become some kind of void projectile. Needless to say, this fight goes from 0 to 100 real quick, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? I mean, I've played some Savage in FF14, and there are dances there to do. But even those dances are not if you're doing Mythic with 20. If you're doing Heroic, you can grow as high as 30 players. It's almost like this, okay. It's almost like they're trying to make everybody really make their groups small. What do you guys think? To try and keep the mechanics controlled? I don't see pugs doing this very easy. Cool and bullet hell boss. Fuck healers, I guess. It's Grenade. How you doing, buddy? Yeah. There's gonna be a lot of healer checks in this raid for sure.
On to the 6th boss, the One-Armed Bandit, which you can only do once you've done all of the previous 5 bosses, so this is where things take a step up for sure. And yeah, you fight a big slot machine. Kinda sick. This boss has 2 phases. In phase 1, the main thing you're dealing with is the cast it does at full energy, which has a lot going on. The super long story short is that it spawns 3 of these assistant ads in set locations, and they each
He is, dude. He's gonna be pretty bald pretty soon, pretty quick.
have a different icon above their head, which tells you what kind of token they're holding, which can be shock, flame, bomb, or coin. And you have to kill the ads to get them to drop their tokens on the ground, and then run over 2 of the tokens to pick them up, and use your extra action button to put them into the boss. And this all has to happen within 30 seconds, or else the boss enrages and it's a wipe. Also, you have to put a different combination of tokens into the boss every time, or else that also enrages the boss. Depending on which combination you put in, it spits out a corresponding mechanic. There's 6 possible mechanics you can get, which we'll go through more.
Shut up, dude. There is no fucking way. 6 possible combinations. This is like trying to unlock the fell cycle. And you have to get all those slots right and pick the 777, and you have to try and... Oh my god. We're too smooth-brained for... There's going to be weak auras for everything here. And this is where I think they're going a little bit overboard. They have tried to create something that, as a casual, the aesthetic of the dungeon is going to hit. The functionality of the dungeon, or the raid, I'm sorry, is going to fail. It's going to be too hard. It's going to be too hard.
Our guide, but half of them spawn fixating bombs you have to avoid and kill.
Hey, look, I can get it. I can get it. I might not be a 5-head, and I might be a little bit of a smooth mind, but I know how to follow directions. And as long as I have a great raid leader, I will learn it. I will live it. I will sleep dreaming about it. I will put my phone next to my head, going over every strat. And I will wake up the next morning knowing that I've learned just a little bit more of what I've got to do on my upcoming raid day. I know this because that's how I do it now. That's why I'm so great.
One spawns some fire swirlies to dodge, one spawns a magnet that pulls everyone in, and another just does a ton of raid damage. Those assistant ads you have to kill also have a few things going on. They can't be moved at all, they do a ton of unavoidable raid damage, they have to be interrupted every once in a while, and they put a dispellable dot debuff on random players that spawns fire swirlies when it's dispelled. Other than that, there's also a pretty unique mechanic going on the whole phase. The boss rolls out these huge casino chips that stun and do big damn to anyone they hit, but if you take a risk and stand super close to one as it's rolling by you, you get a 10% damage and healing buff for a few seconds.
I want to see how many of you greedy fucks are going to be trying to stand as close as you can to the rolling tokens and die. Because you just got greedy. I swear to God, it's going to happen.
So you can play it safe and just dodge them, or if you're a gambler, you can actually have this buff going for a lot of the fight. The chips also fall over on the ground when they hit a wall, and the boss gets a damage buff for however many chips are out on the floor, but you can actually run over to a chip on the ground and roll it yourself to destroy it on the next wall, which also gives people another chance to risk getting that buff.
Shut up. Hey, look, I think it's very cool. I think it's very cool that this is something, this is different. I mean, the idea, whoever came up with this, like I was referring to the video where that Skarsgård is talking with Max and Dratnos. You know, he goes into it with like, throw everything at it. We may never be back here. Throw everything at it. Think outside of the box. Just throw it out there. And let's see what really lands with, you know, everyone creating the dungeons. And that's what they do.
Pretty cool mechanic. Anyway, once you've gone through all 6 of the token combos, the boss starts phase 2, where there's no more ads or tokens, and the boss starts choosing its own new mechanics to throw at you. The first one you get is these coils it puts on the ground randomly that have a beam between it and the boss that basically one-shots anyone that touches it. Then after a while, it adds in these fire beams that it shoots at marked players.
Oh, hell no. How did you know? Hold on. I don't want to rewind, but goddamn, that fire blast came up
which everyone else
fast.
has to avoid. Then it adds in a big permanent dot on the raid, and eventually it enrages and just wipes you. So yeah, this last phase gets crazy real fast. And that's pretty much it. On to the second to last boss of the raid, Mugzy. This boss has 2 phases with an intermission between them. In phase 1, the first thing to know is that the boss has 2 different modes he can be in, which is controlled by having more players on one half of the room or the other. So when more players are on the right side, you get Mug mechanics, and when more are on the left side, you get Z mechanics. And you
So this is Two-Face from Batman. This is literally Two-Face from Batman.
do have to switch modes throughout the phase because the boss gains energy over time, and if he hits full energy, he wipes
It would have been funny if Two-Face, i.e. Muggsy, would have had some coins. Fucking total ripoff of Batman. I would have loved it. Like if a couple coins fall out of his pocket.
raid, and switching modes fully resets his energy. But you don't want to switch sides too often because you get a stack of a long dot every time you switch. As for the mechanics of each side, the left side has these 2 robot ads that spawn in set locations and do random raid damage, which just have to be cleaved down. It has these bomb ads that fixate random players, which are immune to damage, and they explode on the raid.
Wait, oh my god. They're immune to damage? So you just run around with this fixate on you.
If anyone touches them, also spawning these little circles that have to be soaked or else they also explode on the raid. So you have to stagger setting the bombs off so you don't miss any of the little soaks. There's this big circle on a random player that several players have to help soak because it does split damage, and it also leaves fire on the ground and spawns an ad that needs to be focused down. There's this line on the ground that tracks a random player, which a tank has to soak and mitigate to keep that player alive. And there's a big frontal aimed at a random player, which everyone else has to avoid.
Dude, I thought they said they were going to be taking it easy on everybody when it came to all the mechanics. That's a lot of overlapping mechanics. I now own the best guild on Illidan.
The right side mechanics are completely different. There are these circles that go on 2 random players, which have to be separated from each other and group soaked by a few players, because they do split damage and spawn this ring of rock walls with an ad in the middle. The boss has to be kept out of the rings, and the people inside have to kill their ad while dodging its random cone casts, and then use the knockback from the ad's death to break out of the walls. On Heroic, the players outside the walls get targeted by these frost spear things that launch towards you after a couple seconds and one-shot you if they hit you. So you have to get your spear to hit one of the rock walls instead. While you're being targeted, you also get slippery ice feet too, so it's kind of hard to—
Dude, this is going to be the fastest. I swear to God. This is going to be my declaration. People are not going to stay with this raid. They're not. They're going to be so tired as a casual, they're not coming back to raid. Did he just say one shot if it hits you? Yeah, you're gonna get one shot if it hits you. Folks can't deal with that stuff on Princess Fight already. Exactly. This is going to be the most beautiful and the quickest raid that is ever done. Nobody's going to stay with it.
To move around. And finally, there's this long frontal cone that follows a random player, which everyone else has to avoid. When the boss gets to 40% health, he starts the intermission, where he casts a charge at a random player that everyone else has to avoid, and then he spins around with damage cones coming out of either side of him, which everyone also has to avoid. He does this combo a few times before eventually starting phase 2. This phase is crazy because the boss has both of the phase 1 modes active for the rest of the fight, so you have to deal with all of those mechanics at the same time. And it's also a race to the finish because he gets a huge haste buff, gains a damage buff over time, and still hard enrages at full energy. Sounds like a bloodlust situation to me. And that's pretty much it. As for the last boss, Chrome King Gallywix, Blizzard didn't do any testing of him on beta, which means we can't really do a preview for him. However,
I like that. I like the look.
We're making a super detailed prediction video for the fight based on the journal, like we do for the last boss of every tier, so keep an eye out for that. This video was brought to you by Wowhead and their raid overview page, which tells you everything you need to know about the raid. It has the full dungeon journal, all the loot from the raid, links to all the upcoming boss guides, and much more. So check out the Wowhead link in the description. And of course, thank you to our supporters on Patreon for making these videos possible. Don't forget,
There you
our
have it,
Patreon will be
everybody.
loaded with exclusive content this tier.
That is Ready Check Pull, and I will link that in the description down below. But I'm sorry, this could be one of the best or worst dungeons that Blizzard has ever done. For the casual, if you're a dad of 5, if you're a mom of 2, trying to fit in some time and cook dinner still for everybody and then sit down and relax and try and wrap your mind around this, I truly believe it's going to make all of the guilds wonder and scratch their heads. Why aren't they just doing delves? Thank you for watching.